And we'll begin this morning with the Matovu on page 101. The Matovu is on page 101. Matovu ohalecha Yaakov, mishkenotecha Yisrael, v'ani berov chasecha avodeitecha, eshtachave elhecha kodshecha b'yiratecha, Adonai ahavtimon beitecha, v'mekol mishkan kvodecha, v'ani eshtachave v'yechra'a, erecha lifnei Adonai osi, v'ani tefilati lecha Adonai et ratzon, Elohim berov chasdecha, aneni be'emet ishecha. The Matovu starts in the Torah, and perhaps 1,500, 1,800 years ago, give or take, it leaves the Torah and it enters what is becoming the formal prayer service. Matovu means how beautiful Holecha are your tents, Yaakov, O Jacob, Mishkenotecha Yisrael, your own personal dwelling places, O people of Israel. And it's referring back in our memories to a vista from a mountain peak looking down upon the households, the tents of all the Israelites who had recently left Egypt. And the tents are arrayed in a certain configuration within the 12 tribes. This tribe here, this tribe here, this tribe here, and so on. But from looking upon this view comes forth the phrase, Matovu, how beautiful. And that phrase leaves that context, which is described in the book of Bamidbar, book of Numbers, and comes to the prayer service, both in the synagogue and at home. So the starting point in the home, it makes sense, because we're in a home. But for the starting point for the synagogue service to be one of, we appreciate the beauty of a Jewish households, is a very interesting message. We appreciate the beauty of our Jewish households within a community. That's our starting point for Siddur prayer. That every home, every household, every individual adds to the beauty of all of Israel. That's pretty. We rise, the early morning blessings, Birchot HaShachar, on pages 103 and 104. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lasech b'yivino, l'havchin ben yom u'ben layla. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Shalasani v'tzamo. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Shalasani ben chorin. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Shalasani Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Pokeach Ivrim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Malbish Arumim. Top of 104. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Matir Asurim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Zokef Kefufim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Rokah haaretz al hamayim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Hamechin mitzadei gaver. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Sha'asa likol Sarki. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Ozer Israel b'gvuro. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Oter Israel b'tifaro. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Hanoten le'olev koach. Uneinu yom l'chol yom l'cheinu chesed rachamim b'nech v'nechorenu timulenu chasadim tovim Baruch Adonai Gomel chasadim tovim l'amo Yisrael. And we are seated. On page 107. In the center of the page, you see a very well-known passage. It's the Yivarechecha, sometimes called the Aaronic blessing, or the priestly blessing, because Aaron HaKohen first said these words in the wilderness after the Israelites had built the Mishkan, the portable worship space, and there was a dedication ceremony of the people, of the Kohanim, of the Levim, and of the structure itself. And at the dedication ceremony, Aaron said, Yevarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha, Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'chuneka, Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom, which many people are familiar with. May God bless you and guard you and watch over you. May God bring God's face upon you and show you grace and favor and protection. May God lift up God's face to you and bring you peace. It's become traditional over the centuries, on some occasions, for parents to say these words over their children. And I would say that grandparents also can say these words over their grandchildren. And often teachers say these words over their students. And on occasions I say these words over my students as well. Every individual has that power which comes forth from love, to call upon God to come into the life of someone else. And this blessing is here in the Siddur to remind us of that. But the actual context is different. The actual context is, in effect, each person, ideally Jewish people say prayers every day, each person can kind of bless himself. Because this is recited typically in the early morning private section of the prayer tradition throughout the days of the week and also on Shabbos. But throughout the year, people get up and they get dressed and they prepare for their day. And if they're saying their prayers, this is part of the early morning prayer service. So in fact, each one of us calls out to God to bless himself or herself. In my own head, I kind of think about my family as well. On the English side, may Adonai bless and protect you. May Adonai's countenance shine upon you. And may Adonai bestow kindness upon you. May Adonai's countenance be lifted toward you. May Adonai grant you peace. The Psalm for Shabbat on page 112. Mizmor shir liyom ha-Shabbat, tovodot l'Adonai, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon, lahagi b'boker chasedecha, ve'emunatcha b'leilot, alei asur v'alei navel, alei higayon b'chinot. Mizmor shir liyom ha-Shabbat, tovodot l'Adonai, ulezamer l'shimcha L'shimcha elyon, u'lezamer l'shimcha elyon. On the English side, you gladden me with your deeds, Adonai, and I shall sing of your handiwork. How wonderful are your words, Adonai, the son of your designs. The arrogant do not understand, the fool does not comprehend this. The wicked flourish like grass, and every evildoer blossoms, only to be destroyed forever.
But you, Adonai, are exalted for all time.
Surely your enemies, Adonai, surely your enemies will perish. All who commit evil will be scattered.
As in a wild bull raises up its horns, you raised my head high and anointed it with fresh oil.
As my enemies gather against me, my gaze remains steady, for my ears listen and hear. The righteous flourish like the date palm, thrive like a cedar in Lebanon, planted in the house of Adonai. They flourish in our God's courtyards. I want to stop there for just a moment. We're on page 112 on the English side. It's near the end of the Psalm for Shabbat. As my enemies gather against me, my gaze remains steady, which means I'm calm. And the message of this psalm, which is associated with Shabbat, is that you and I are as established as the heavens and the earth themselves. And when we look around us, and it may be that there are threats, we, according to the psalm, need to be confident in who we are. And each one of us aspires to and becomes a tzaddik, a righteous person. And God has need of tzaddikim, righteous people in the world. And because you and I have the capacity for righteousness, we will contribute to and strengthen not only human society, but the physical world itself. And that's why this psalmic message of support and of confidence says, as my enemies gather against me, I remain steady and calm, and the righteous flourish like the date palm, and in old age the righteous people will still remain fruitful and fresh and bountiful, because righteous people are a guarantee. That's what this psalm associated with Shabbat, recited Friday night and Saturday morning, is placing before us. Righteous people are a guarantee of the world and for human society. Tzaddik tamar yifrach ke'erez ba'alanon yizkeh shetulim bebeit Adonai b'chatrot Eloheinu yafrichu od yedov b'seva tishei v'rananim yiyu v'hagid ki yashar Adonai suri v'lo Baruch Shamar on page 122. Baruch Shamar Ehaya Ha'olam Baruch Hu Baruch Hoseh Bereshit Baruch Omer Ve'oseh Baruch Gozer Umekayem Baruch Merachem Al Haaretz Baruch Merachem Al Habriot Baruch Mishalem Sachar Tov Lireyav Baruch Chaylad V'Kayam Netzach Baruch Hodeh Umatzil, Baruch Shalom. We will celebrate you, Adonai, our God, with praise and song. We will extol, acclaim, and glorify you, honoring your name, and declaring that you are our sovereign God. The singular one who gives life to the world, the sovereign who is praised and glorified forever and ever. This is your great name. Baruch atah Adonai, sovereign, celebrated with songs of praise. Yachid Olamim, Melech Nishmach Navar, Adei Ad Shemo Hadadol, Baruch atah Adonai, Melech Nehulot Batishbachot. On page 128. Yes, sir.
If you get an 80 on the practice of righteousness, will God protect you from your enemies?
Yes.
How about 75?
Yes.
What is
Is it a scale? A plus to like C minus? Where do you fit?
It's a tough one. The 613, you know, you can't do those, and you don't want to do those. But that's always a question in my mind. Do the best you can?
Do the best you can.
Okay.
Do the best you can, and be motivated to see yourself as essential to the world. When you get up in the morning, you put your feet on the floor and you stand up, and then you take care of what you need to do, and then you get dressed and walk out the door. Do you see yourself as being essential to the world? We can. We need to. That's what Torah is for. Our message is to go out into the world and to make a difference. And of course, we can't guarantee, like our friends with, used to be E.F. Hutton, we cannot guarantee past behavior will guarantee future results. But we have to try. We need to try. We must try. But each one of us has something to give to the world, the physical world, and all the society, all the interactions of all humanity every single day. And for some it might be a simple gesture of kindness to a clerk who is often ignored. And for others it might be a matter of financial tzedakah, and for others it might be a matter of extending patience or support to somebody who is dealing with a health crisis. And the sky's the limit with all the imagination that you and I can bring to the world, because when we meet so-and-so here on this day, and when you talk to so-and-so here on this day, the situation is different. That you have an infinite resource of glory within you, because you are the vessel that contains a soul. So just consider the majesty in your own influence in the world for the better. We don't get that kind of information and input from the news or from fortune cookies. We get it from Yiddishkeit. The bottom of 128. Below the red is the lower third of the page. The eyes of Adonai are on the righteous. God's ears are open to their cry. Adonai turns toward the evildoers, erasing their memory from the earth. But if they cry out, Adonai will hear them and deliver them from all their troubles. For Adonai is close to the brokenhearted, rescuing those who are downcast. Many are the troubles the righteous may suffer, but Adonai will deliver them from all of these. God protects their every limb, not one will be broken. Evil will crush the evildoer. Those that despise the righteous will suffer their guilt. Adonai redeems the lives of those who serve God. Those who turn to God for support shall not be found blameworthy. The eyes of God are upon us all, with care and love and gentleness and protection. The Ashrei is on page 136. And since we know that God is looking upon us, that means that we've been invited into God's courtyard. God's opened the door and we're walking in. And we're sitting in the patio. We're sitting in the living room. God said, come on in. Let's visit together. And so, Ashrei, we're happy and satisfied within ourselves because we're in God's house. Ashrei Yashvei Beitecha, Od Yalucha Selam. Ashrei Am Shekachalo, Ashrei Am Sheroim Olav. Tila David, Aramimcha Lahai HaMelech, Avarcha Shimcha Le'olam Vaed. V'chol Yom Avarchecha, V'ahavla Shimcha Le'olam Vaed. Gadol Adonai V'lolod, V'ligdulato Ein Cheker. Dolador Yishavach Masecha, L'vuratecha Yagidu. Adar Kavod Hodecha, V'divrei Mitzotecha Asicha. V'ezuz Norotecha Yomeru, V'gedulatecha Asavteno. Zechera Tulecha Yaviu, V'tzidkatecha Yiranenu. Chanun Rachum Adonai, Erech Lapayim V'dol Chesed. Tov Adonai L'Akol, V'chamav Okol Ma'asov. Yoduch Adonai Kol Ma'asecha, V'chasidecha Yivarucha. Kvod Malchutcha Yomeru, V'gvoratecha Yidaberu. L'odiach libnei Adam Gvurotav, V'chod Hadar Malchuto. Malchutecha Malchut Kol Olamim, U'memshaltecha B'chol dor v'dor. Somech Adonai l'chol ha'noflim, V'zokech l'chol ha'kfufim. Enei chol elecha yisaveru, V'ata noten lehem et achlam b'ito. Poteach et yodecha, U'maspiach l'chol charatzon. Sadik Adonai l'chol derachav, V'chasid b'chol ma'asav. Karov Adonai l'chol korav, V'chol asher b'uvemet. Ritzon re'av ya'aseh, V'yet Shabbatam yishma v'yoshiem. Shomer Adonai et kol ohavav, V'yet kol charshaim yashmid. Tilat Adonai daber pi, V'yorech abasar shekachol elam voed. V'anachnu nevarech yah me'ata v'yad olam. Hallelujah. On page 141, the top of the page. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. B'kodsho, hallelujah. Berki Ozal. Hallelujah. B'gvuratav, hallelujah. Kerav Gulal. Hallelujah. B'tikasho, Hallelujah, Nevel Gechinor, Hallelujah, Betofu Makol, Hallelujah, meaning your God. Hallelujah, Hallelujah, Betzil Tzalei Shama. Hallelujah, Hallelujah, Betzil Tzalei Shama. Kol Shama. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Kol Hanshama te hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Page 142 is a compilation of different texts from different parts of the Bible. Not the Psalms, you see here Chronicles and Nehemiah. Much of Jewish prayer is actually Bible study. So if you're following the traditional cycle in the daily morning service, Sunday morning, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, much of what you're doing is actually teaching yourself Bible. And on Shabbos, there are additional elements that are added to that because, hey, you got time, you're going to work, you got time, so let's study some Bible. Why not? And you're skimming and scanning and floating through many different books from the Bible by looking at representational texts from those passages of those books. And so this is from Nehemiah, and it's the third stanza down. And I'm looking at this because this is talking about today. As in this week's Torah reading, we meet Avram. Jewish history begins today in this parsha. This parsha is known as Lech Lecha. It's the third parsha of Bereshis. And this is where we meet our dad and mom for the first time, Avram and Sarai. And so this little phrase from the Bible, which is in effect kind of a recap and a reminder of Genesis, is here, and we learn, you Adonai are God. It was you who chose Abram, took him out of Ur of the Chaldees, which is Persian Gulf, changed his name to Avraham, and found him faithful. God and our ancestor meet, and the end result is us. And we can see ourselves as ancestors of the millennia yet to be. Page 145, Nishmat Kol Chai, the soul of every living thing, has only one choice, to bless God. Nishmat Kol Chai, Tevarech et Shimcha, Adonai Eloheinu. On page 147, it's the first little red arrow. Shochet ad marom, Please rise to Birchad or the top of page 150. Pardon me. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Yotzer borei choshen oseh shalom uborei et hakol. Baruch atah Adonai, our God, sovereign of time and space, forming light and creating darkness, being in harmony while creating all. And we are seated. El Adon al kol ha'masim baruch u'baruch v'fikol neshama kolo v'tuvo malei olam ta'atu tvona asol v'imotu hamitkal hayot HaKodesh v'ner ha'machan al ha'merkava tzachot v'shor livnei chiso chesed v'rachamim livnei chodo tovim ha'orot shebara Eloheinu yitzaram b'dat b'bina v'vaskei al-koach v'gvura natan b'hem liot moshtim b'kerev tevel v'leim zev u'tikim no'ezim v'cholam semechim b'tzedim v'sasim b'volam osim b'yem v'ritzon konam pe'er v'chavod notnim lishmo tzal avarina l'zecher malchuto kara v'shemesh v'yizrach ora v'hiki tzurot l'avanav shevach nodnimo kol tzava morom tiveretu g'dula s'rafim ovanim v'chayot HaKodesh yadai yadai 153 on the English side. The last little red arrow. In God's goodness, the work of creation is renewed each day. As the psalmist declared, thank the creator of the great lights, for God's love is everlasting. Because a new light to shine in Sion, and may we all soon be worthy of its illumination. Baruch atah Adonai, creator of lights. Or chadash al Tion ta'ir, or chadash al Tion ta'ir, or chadash al Tion ta'ir, or chadash al Tion ta'ir. V'nizkeh cholanu me'era le'ora. V'nizkeh cholanu me'era le'ora. Baruch atah Adonai, Yotzer Ha'orot. On page 154, it's the first paragraph on the English side. You've loved us deeply, Adonai, our God, and showered us with boundless compassion. Avinu Malkeinu, for the sake of our ancestors who trusted in you and to whom you taught the laws of life, so may you be gracious to us and instruct us. Kind Creator, have compassion for us. Open our hearts so we may understand, and with love discern, hear, and study. Observe, perform, and fulfill all the teachings of your Torah with love. Enlighten our eyes with your Torah. Attach our hearts to your mitzvot. Unify our hearts to love and revere your name, so that we never lose hope. As we trust in your great, holy, awe-inspiring name, we will delight and rejoice in your deliverance. Gathering the tzitziot together, the bottom stanza on page 154, a reminder that every Jew is infinitely valuable, and we are to reach our hands out and welcome Jewish people into our community, extending your hands to others. It's V'havayenu, the bottom of page 154. V'havayenu l'shalom me'arba kantot haaretz v'tolicheinu komemiyut le'artzeinu ki elpo yeshuvotata uvanu v'charta mikol velashon v'keravon l'shimcha hagadol selah be'emet l'hodot l'cha ol yachecha b'yahava Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Yisrael b'yahava 155 Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Be'ahavta Ekonai Elohecha B'chol levacha U'b'chol nafshecha U'b'chol be'otecha V'hayu hadarim ha'ele Asher Anochi etzavayu alecho V'shinarta b'necha V'dibarta V'shivtecha v'beitecha V'lechtecha b'derech V'shachbecha v'chumecha V'kisharta l'ot al yadecha V'hayu l'teftecha b'einecha V'kacha al mezuzot beitecha U'v'shamecha in the middle of page 156, the third paragraph of the Shema. Vayomer Adonai el Moshe Lemor, Taver el Bnei Yisrael, K'mar Toyem, Yasu lahem tzitzit, al kanvei vigdeihem l'otam, v'namnu al tzitzit, hakanaf petiot achelet, vayalachem l'tzitzit, uritem oto, u'schartem kol mitzvot Adonai, v'asitem otam, v'lo taturu, acharei l'vachem, v'acharei elechem, asher atem zonim achareihem, l'man tizkuru, v'asitem et kol mitzvotai, v'yitem kerushim l'vachem, Ani Adonai Elohim, asher tzeichi etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim, lihiyot lachem l'Elohim, Ani Adonai Elohim, Adonai Elohim. On page 157, the last two stanzas on the English side. Truly, you are the ruler of your people, a mighty sovereign who takes up their cause. Truly, you are the beginning, you will be at the end. Aside from you, we have no ruler who can redeem and deliver. On page 158, the first little red arrow, Tehilot. Tehilot le'el elyon, baruch u'mubarach, Moshe u'Miriam, u'bnei Yisrael, lecha anu shira, b'simcha rabav yamru kulam, michamocha, b'elim Adonai, michamocha, nedar HaKadosh, noratilot, oseifelem, shira chadasha, shirchu ge'ulim, l'shimcha sefat hayam, yachad kulam, hoduvin lechol yamru, Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed, Sur Yisrael, Kama Ezrak Yisrael, Avechim Mecha, Yehuda v'Yisrael, Go Aleinu, Adonai Tzivot Shemo, Kiddush Yisrael. In a moment, we get together on page 159 and 160. We have a minion, so we're going to sing the Kedusha 161. And you know what the Kedusha is? Kedusha is a poem, and we are inside the vision of Isaiah's seeing and encountering angels. We don't have that opportunity if we have only 9 adults in the room or if we're davening by ourselves. Well, when that one person comes in, which is the 10th, but then if one person leaves, then that person is now the 9th, which means every one of us is essential. We have a minion. We are elevated to be singing with the angels. Look at the opportunity that each one of us has to contribute to a community that we can sing with the angels symbolically, poetically in the Kedusha. Beginning aloud 159 through 161, thereafter a few moments of silence. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el HaGadol, HaGibor, HaNorah, Elokeinu Mashiach Umageh. Baruch atah Adonai, Mageh Avraham Uvokei Tzaro. Atah Gibor Leolam Adonai, Mechayim Eitim atah Rav Hoshia. Mashiach Ruach Mori Hagash. Mechakel Chayim Bechesed, Mechayim Eitim Beracham Rabbi. So Mechnoflim Berofech Olim, O Matir Asurin, O Mekayim Belunato, Lishnei Afar, Micha Mocha Babilurot, O Meido Melach, Melech Memit Mechayim, O Mazmiach Yeshua. כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי מרום, כך כתוב היות נביאך, וקרא זה אל זה ויאמר.
קדוש, 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 אדוני צבאות, מלך הארץ ברוך.
קדוש, 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 אדוני צבאות, מלך הארץ ברוך. אז בקול רעש גדול, אדיר וחזק, משמיעים קול, מתנשאים לעומת שרפים, לעומתה ברוך ימינו.
ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו.
ברוך ממקומו, במקומך מלכנו תופיע, ותמלוך עלינו, כי מחכים אנחנו לך, מתי תמלוך בציון, בקרוב בימינו לעולם ועד תשכון. תתגדל ותתגרש בתוך ירושלים עירך, לדור ודור ולנצח נצחים. ויהינו תירנה מלכותך, כדבר חמור בשירי עוזך. על ידי דוד משיח צדקך,
ימלוך אדוני עולם מלך ציון, לדור ודור.
ימלוך העולם מלך ציון, לדור ודור, הללויה. לדור ודור נגיד לך, ולנצח נצחים, קדושתך נקדיש, ושבחך אלוהינו מפינו לא ימוש לעולם ועד, כי אל מלך וקדוש אתה, ברוך אתה אדוני, האל הקדוש. On page 167. Yitkana Vitkash Shemem Belmod Yerusha Tzimru Yehi Shemei Rabba Mevorach Olam Yom Yitorach Yitorach Yishtabach Yikargu Sevid Adarga Shmei Kudashah Leilam and Kuberchata Vishirata Tishbachata Venechamata Tangram Gama Vimeru Tikabel Slotomadun the Faisra Kadam Abu Hondi Vishmai Vimeru Yehish Vimeru O Seshal Bermama Yaseshal Olena Vimeru The Torah service begins on page 168. And come on, Elohim Adonai, v'yei k'masecha, malchutecha, malchut, kol olamim, amemshaltecha, b'chol dor v'ador, Adonai melech, Adonai malach, Adonai yimloch, le'olam v'od, Adonai ozlam oyitein, Adonai yevarech, et avol v'shalom, Amen. Heiti aver tzoncha, et Zion, Tinechamat Yerushalayim, Tinechamat Yerushalayim, Ki v'cha levavotachnu, Melech Elam v'nisa, Adon olamim. Please rise. Elijah, just step forward for a second. Vayhi b'so Aharon, vayomer Moshe, Kuma Adonai, ve'yachutzu oevecha, ve'yanusu mesanecha, v'panecha, ki b'Zion tetzei Torah, ki b'Zion tetzei Torah, Odvar Adonai mirushalayim, Baruch shenatan Torah, Baruch shenatan Torah, le'amo Yisrael b'kedushato. Ribono shel olam, these doors are now open. We have a need. We have a great need in our world, in our nation, across this land, for a miracle to occur. That an opening of the minds begin. You, O God, are the creator of the universe. Prompt people of different backgrounds to have the strength and the courage to open their minds just a little bit, so that some of the shouting will subside, some of the screaming will lessen, and a little bit more of listening and speaking will take place. In every city and village and town across this land, let there be an opening of the ears to voices and ideas and opinions that may be just a little bit different. And let there be enough confidence in the hearts of all of our citizens that they are strong enough without being hostile, confrontational, attacking. Open the minds just a little bit as we now open these doors. The bottom of page 170. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Echad Eloheinu Gadol, Adonai Kadosh Shema. Go down here. Take the crown off. Put the crown on the seat. Exactly. We are seated. The show would not operate without a plan scale. We're getting Gavin. Stand here, doesn't come into this. The Torah reading for today is Lech Lecha, and it's found in the Chumash on page 69. And we'll begin the reading in just a moment on page 69. We need to remember a lot when we're studying Torah. First, we look at the page 69, you see this enormous number 12 in the upper left corner, chapter 12. And please remember that all chapter and verse markings and demarcations come along very, very late, and they probably don't start appearing in what we call manuscripts and then printed volumes until the 1300s, 1400s, 1500s of this era, just a mere 600-700 years ago, we might say, in round numbers, which means that from the time of the beginning of the Torah reading about 2,500 years ago, round numbers 500 or 400 BCE until the 1400s, so what's that, 1,800 years, give or take? No chapter numbers, no verse numbers. And we Jews knew where a passage began and ended, and we called it, for the past 2,500 years, the Torah portion of the week, Parshat HaShavua, Shavua meaning week. So this is the third parsha of the Torah, and this is where Jewish history begins. When an old couple, he's 75 and she's 65, hear this compelling, esoteric, perhaps very bizarre and strange message or voice: go forth, leave the land. Artacha moladcha mibedavicha, the land, your birthplace, the home of your father, and go off to the frontier. And there was no promise of 40 acres and a mule, but there was a promise that I'm going to be with you, saith the voice from beyond all measure and definition. I'm going to be with you, and the promise that I am with you is going to be manifest by your future generations for centuries and millennia to come without number. So this is the beginning of Jewish history. And I do get a lump in my throat every time we come to Lech Lecha, because this is the beginning. This is when a couple who have no kids are going to become parents, and then grandparents, and then great-great-great-great-grandparents. And that's how Jewish history begins, with one elderly couple quietly departing from the status quo and choosing to move to a new location. That's the beginning of Jewish history. One man, one woman, walking a different path. That's how Jewish history and Jewish life and the civilization that undergirds much of now known as the three monotheistic religious traditions emerges. But it's not until the third parsha. The first parsha is creation of the entire universe. The second parsha talks about humanity in general, the ups and downs. And then there's a shifting of direction or focus. And Jewish history is, on the one hand, the enormity of the entire book, the enormity the entire scroll and successive books thereafter. But on the other hand, it's only a part of a much bigger whole. And that, for me, grabs me by the insides. And as compelling as we have a tradition where we're connected to God and the challenge to bring righteousness and law and justice and compassion and kindness and holiness and mitzvah and kedusha into the universe, we're not the end-all and be-all, but we are a necessary and constituent part of everything. And that, for me, is the way that I understand that eternal question of what is the role of the Jew? To be a contributing part, an essential and a necessary part of the everything. And on the one hand, we are amazing. On the other hand, we've got so much to do. And don't let the kedusha go to our heads. So now we're the first Aliyah, we're on page 69. Ve'yam yavod, shek ben, da'leve, ahuba, v'gogel rishon, v'shvazato, v'hagel, hayom.
Baruch Adonai HaMorach.
Baruch
Adonai Baruch Olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Hamim V'natan Lanu Et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen. Vayomer Avraham lech lecha me'artzecha u'mimoladtecha bebeit avicha el ha'aretz asher arakta v'ascha levoy gadol v'avorecha v'agala shemecha v'yevracha v'avorecha levarecha v'mgalecha aor v'nivrecha v'cha v'mishbecha da'adama.
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Natan Lanu Torah Temet V'chayei Olam Nitav B'Torcheinu. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen.
That's good. Can I circle back to what we
Of
were
course,
talking about earlier?
circle back, sure.
Talking about it in the Shachari, we were talking about righteousness.
Yes,
I think everyone would agree that Avraham was righteous, right?
we hope so.
Yeah.
Sure, we aspire to that, of course.
I mean, he set a really good example here.
Absolutely.
But you were talking about their decision to leave their original home to go, and it says, God told them to go. I think it's like a test.
It is a test. So if you and I heard a voice, and maybe that's an audible voice through the ears, or maybe it's just a sense inside ourselves that we need to strike out on our own path, and in so doing, we now represent something new, a new pathway into daily living. We might say, long COVID, something, right? No, I'm going to just ignore that, or I'll go to the psychologist next week, I'll take a pill right now and put it away, because I'm comfortable here, I've got the 401k, the house is paid for, the camel's in the backyard, the dog's okay, no, I'm part of the PTA, no, I've got a parking space at work, I'm not going to leave, I'm too comfortable, it's all situated. But if the voice come back, and says, you really need to move forward, you need to go somewhere else, you need to have a starting point in a different location with different opportunities. Would we hear that voice? Would we listen to that voice? And that's really scary. And he's described as being 75 and she's 65, so they're moving a little slower. They might be having a little bit of arthritis in the knee, right, doctor? I mean, 75, the back's not quite as flexible as it used to be, and they got to pick up all their stuff and start moving. Not only is it a psychological challenge, but it's a physical challenge as well. So maybe this is a test. And as described here in the Torah, God does this speaking, I'll make you a great nation. All the nations of the world are going to be blessed as a result of your decision now, which takes us back to what's the role of the Jew. All the nations of the world will be blessed and transformed on a spiritual level as a result of your decision to embrace monotheism and to bring a challenge of justice into the every single day through what's going to become mitzvah, commandedness, and sanctity, kedusha. Everybody's going to be changed because of you. That's the challenge. And it's verse 4, secondly, on page 71. Vayelech Avram, he left. He didn't respond. He didn't ask any questions. He didn't say, do we have a AAA map? Where are we going? Are there tolls? Do I need change in my pocket? Is there food? Where are we going? He just left. And furthermore, this is the part that I'm attuned to, we know that Avram is taking Sarai, his wife, and his nephew. But the verb here is verse number 4 on page 71. Vayelech Avram, and Avram left. And then it's, as you see, Vayelech to Lot, Avram and Meshavim, right? And Vayikach, verse 5, Vayikach Avram et Sarai Ishto. So Avram took his wife and his nephew and they went. But the verb Vayelech in verse 4 and Vayikach in verse 5 is singular. Every Hebrew verb automatically tells you if it's singular or plural. The verb itself, without even a pronoun. The verb always tells you, is it singular or is it plural? And the singular element here in verse 4 and verse 5 is that Abram did this. So, on the one hand, we would say, wow, look at this man who's just wrapped up in this enthusiasm, and he's so involved, and he's ready to go, and he's gathering up his family, and he's leaving. But on the other hand, we don't really know the nature of how he departed, and the nature of how Sarai is responding, and the nature of how Lot is responding. Why is he taking his nephew? Well, they have no sons, no children, no sons or daughters. So why is he taking his nephew? And we don't know. Maybe nephew just wanted to get away from his own mom and dad and thought, I'll go with Uncle Abe and Aunt Sarai. That's where he goes. That's Lot. But whenever a family is moving, there are all kinds of challenges and forces at work. And the focus here might be only on Avram's behavior. And again, is that to the good or is it the bad of the nuclear family? We could talk about that for hours. We can't because we have others to learn and study. Navod Sheben Dalei Dahuva Levi. Verse 4.
Baruch Adonai Hamarach. Baruch Adonai Hamarach. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher B'Charvanu Mikol Hamim V'Natan Lanu Et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Vayelech Avram kasher diber elav Adonai v'yelech ito Lot Avram ben 5 shanim ו70 shana b'tzito melech Haran vayikach Avram et Sarai ishto ve'et Lot ben achiv v'torechu sham shiva chashu v'et hanefesh yerasu b'Haran vayitzulu lecher aretz Canaan v'yavor etz Canaan v'yavor Avram be'eretz ad makom Shem ad elam moreh v'Kanaani az ba'aretz Adonai Avram, Vayim Zarachah, Etain et haaretz hazot, V'yivin sham mizbeach Adonai, Haner elav, Vayitech misham hara, Mikem lebeit el, Vayetach lo, Beit el, Miyam ba'ai, Mikedem, V'yivin sham mizbeach Adonai, Vayikra b'shem Adonai, Vayisa Avram, Haloch v'nefsoa, Hanegba.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah tamet v'chayei olam natan v'tocheinu Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Moshe Hersh, Yamal, Moshe Meshviyanko, Leshlishi. We're on 72, verse 10, we're starting, but one of my favorite sentences, one of my many favorite sentences in Torah is here. It's verse number 9. I love the sentence. Vayisa Aram halo v'nasoa ha-negba. And Avram is journeying ever slowly, gradually towards the Negev. And he's leaving Syria. And where's the Negev? Down south. And you could read Negev as south, not just the desert. So, Avram is journeying to the south. The beginning of Jewish history, my friend, is that a man heads to the south. Ain't that grand?
Yeah, the hankering for sweet tea.
I love it. He had hankering for sweet tea. So, but no fried catfish, not this boy Avram. He went to the south. And I love this phrase, as we know, because Jewish history begins as a result of somebody's leaving that infernal Yankee northern position and heading to the south. And Mark and I are both Connecticut boys, so we can say that it's all right. And as you know, we've got these two decorative light boxes in the foyer on the wall of the chapel door. And the one to the left, as we face the chapel door, has this phrase in it. It's that gold illumination, because Jewish history began as a function of one man's having the choice and the courage to leave his home and to travel to the south, to start a whole new life which becomes Torah. And the other light box is a phrase from the Siddur, but based upon one of the Nevi'im, Malachi prophet. And it says, put life and Torah and Ahavas Chesed into the world. And now you know why those two boxes have those messages. Because when the artist and the architect were designing them, Dave Mitchell donated the funds to beautify our foyer. I was given the opportunity to select the phrasing, and I chose one phrase containing the name of our shul in the prayer book. I chose the other phrase from this passage because our Jewish history starts collectively in the South. I think that's a hoot. We're allowed to laugh, by the way, in the shul.
We know that God has a significant influence on our lives. We learn later on that God stiffened Pharaoh's heart.
Yes.
So is it not logical to assume that God did something physically to Avram so he would not protest about leaving, that he wasn't going to choose anyone who was going to give him any aggravation and debate with him on whether he was going to leave or not? And if Avram didn't do what he was going to do, we probably wouldn't be standing here today. Unless God went to somebody else who...
Okay.
I was thinking that Avram worked in his father's shop, and his father made... is that a story? Oh, okay. And that was why he chose Avram, because he was righteous and because he threw out the idols and crushed the idols. So he knew his subject, and he obviously influenced his heart not to object and go. And he made him a promise.
He made him a promise.
He made him a big time promise.
But there is a bit of an issue with that. If God interceded with Avram and made Avram more likely to just up and go, what could be a problem there?
Well, free will and all of that, but this is a long time ago.
It's kind of an issue.
Yeah, it was a long time ago that God was not that kept on free will.
That was what I was trying to get to a second ago.
Yes, right.
So I said it was a test, right?
Sure.
But God already knows what's going to happen, right? God knows.
Yeah, right.
But it's because Avram's righteous that it makes the testing worth it, you know?
Sounds good. Sounds
When
good.
Abraham pulled out of the shop, he put the family in jeopardy because that was one main worker in the shop. So God is saying you can leave and take your family, but don't worry about your father and mother and all those people. They'll have to survive somehow or not. Eddie?
Yes, you're right. And every decision that we make as a family, as individuals, will affect family members. So, but the other wrinkle is that, I'm fascinated by Lot, the nephew. Lot comes along with, and depending upon how we view Lot, which we'll see in this little section a little bit later on as well, he's a borderline. I mean, maybe he's a righteous guy, maybe he's a righteous guy in training, maybe he's not the most righteous guy, maybe he's got opportunity or capacity to grow. So it's significant that Lot leaves along with Avram and Sarai, and it's significant that Avram's father doesn't. That is a statement. Oh, there it is, Mark. So,
No.
okay.
That's what the El Presidente.
El Presidente. So, Katie, which page is that on? Katie?
71.
Look at, thank you, said Katie and Mark. On page 71, verse number 5, the commentary, it's the upper passage of commentary, verse 5, that's a little comment about Lot. And now we're moving on to the facility of Vayirav.
Yes, I think Quran is the...
Amen. Vayirav ba'aretz, vayirav Mitzrayim lagur sham, ki chaverav ba'aretz, vayi kasher yikriv lavo Mitzrayim v'mer el Sarai ishto, hinena yadati ki isha yafat mareat, v'yakiru ota hamitzrim, v'amru ish ve'amru ishto zot v'argoto v'argo oti v'otaki chayu. Imrinach oti at lamani tavliv haborech v'chayta nafshi b'glalech.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech olam asher nasa lanu Torah sames v'chayei olam notav v'socheinu. Baruch atah Adonai noseinu Torah.
Amen. Maybe may I call you up?
Sorry?
May I call you up, Andy?
Sure.
What's your name?
Miriam Leah Bat Shmuel Pinchas.
Yama, Mirlei Bachmo Pincus. And your mom's name?
She's not Jewish.
Okay. Okay, well, what's her name anyway? What's
Her name is Alice
Alice
Margolis.
Margolis. Come on up, welcome to Mobile. We're glad you're here.
Thank you.
The next Leah is on page, what's that page? Where else? It's on page 73, verses 14 onto the top of page 74. And as Avram is being told by God to go forth and chart a new path, which we view as a path of righteousness and justice and sanctity, Well, there's a famine, and so Abram has to relocate because there's no food in Canaan, so he goes to Egypt. And his wife is described as very pretty, and Abram is afraid that she's going to be taken as a captive and he'll be killed, which must be fairly typical, I guess, when a pharaoh finds out that there's a pretty new young girl in town. You know, she's 65, by the way. But anyway, and Avram says, I don't want to be killed. We're going to, if it's okay with you, pass you off as my sister. And you see this passage, it starts previously and it continues here in this next aliyah. And there have been volumes of commentary written about this. To what extent is Avram correct or justified in putting his wife into this position of hazard and of danger? And secondly, what does it mean for Avram to tell his wife that you and I have to lie? And it would be a lengthy discussion. But again, as I'm very fond of saying, the Torah records much of the details of the lives of our ancestors. And sometimes it may look offensive to us as we read these texts. The Torah doesn't conceal. It's the good and the bad. And every synagogue around the world that's functioning with Torah is reading this passage today, which means every Jewish community, every single year, is challenging itself to address the ups and the downs, the pluses and the minuses of our ancestors. And that's the pivotal part of Jewish prayer. That's the pivotal part of Jewish prayer. Take good helmets. Shade where am I?
Baruch Adonai Hamburach. Baruch Adonai Hamburach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam, Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Ha'amim V'natan Lanu Et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen. Vayigvo Avram Mitzrayma. Vayrom Mitzrayim et Laisha ki yafa himod. Vayrotas rei Paro. Vayhalu ota el Paro. Vatukach Laisha beit Paro. Ulavrom etiv bavra. Vayilo Zon Bakar V'chamurim V'avadim Ushvachot V'atanot U'malim V'negarana et Paro Negaim Grolim V'et Beito Al Devar Sarai Eshet Avram V'grav Avram V'yimer Mazot Asita Li Lama Lo Igarata Li Ki Ishtecha Hi Lama Marta Achoti V'kachota Li Leisha V'ata Hine Ishtecha Kach V'lech V'yitzav Ala Paro Anashim V'yishafu Oto V'et Ishto V'kol Asher Bo.
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam, Asher Natan Lanu Torah Emet V'chayei Olam Notah B'tocheinu. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen. Mandy just visited. She emailed yesterday and asked, can I come to show? Of course. So she came. So we're excited. So would you stay after lunch?
Sure. Just say, I'm from Jackson, Mississippi. So,
of course.
so you know, right.
Is that Jackson, Alabama, or?
Yeah, no, I'm a Mississippi girl.
Okay, good. We like this.
We often have a lay-led Shabbat morning service, and when Rabbi is out of town, I often do lead that service. Our previous rabbi gave me that opportunity, and I feel very fortunate to have that opportunity. So we really encourage a lot of lay-led services and activities.
That's beautiful.
And so I've had some time to build up some confidence, and I do love to sing and chant, So, but that's something I really appreciate about my show.
Wonderful.
That is a tradition that was started at some point.
That's great.
Yeah. So I've had some practice. Thank you.
Ruthie, you right?
Yeah, what?
You
Five.
should change.
Ruthie.
Ruthie. We're on Kamishi, right?
Let me shoot. I can count to 5, I promise.
Tomorrow, help me out here. Come on. You're right. It's Kamishi, right?
Let me shoot.
Kamishi. I can never count past 4 because I always forget when So we're now on page 74. Yes, sir.
I read something interesting, not like crazy interesting, but Hagar comes later in this parsha,
Exactly.
but she comes from here apparently.
From Mitzrayim, yes.
Apparently, she might be Pharaoh's daughter.
Oh,
That's what a princess.
Whoa,
Yeah.
what a cool midrash.
Yeah.
That's crazy. And then that midrash, did you hear what Seth just said? So it's interesting that there's this story or commentary versus the midrash that Sarai and Pharaoh had a child, and perhaps that child was a daughter who grows up to be Hagar. And then later, when she becomes the handmaiden of Sarai, or Sarah, and then later Sarah wants a child and can't have one, she gives Hagar to Abraham at that point in time. So that's interesting. It's kind of like, was it come about fair play? What's that phrase? Right? Something about that? So in Hebrew we call it Mida Keneged Mida, because it was Avram who put Sarai into a position of being subservient and potentially in danger, and as a result, she, if this story is interesting, which is accurate or whatever, becomes pregnant, and so now that the foible comes back and kind of lands on Avram again in a different way. So that's interesting, and that's classic Jewish commentary. It's called one situation begets a similar situation a little bit later. In Hebrew, it's called Mida Keneged Mida. So interesting. You need to look for that. That's cool. We're on page 74, it's chapter 13, verse number 1, Vayal. Vayal, which is right.
Baruch et Adonai Hambarach. Baruch et Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'na'atam lanu et Torato. Baruch et Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Vayal Avram miMitzrayim hu v'ishto v'chol shelo v'lo timo hanegva v'avrom kavim lod b'mikneh b'kesef v'zahav v'yelch l'masa minegev v'ad Beitel al makom asher yasham ohlo b'tchila bein Beitel v'nei el makom hamizbech asher sham b'ri Shona, Vaikra, Shal Avram Shem Adonai.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam nata b'tocheinu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. We're on page 75, and it's this next Aliyah. Katie, may I call you up? No. So, Meir, may I call you up? Yamo Meir Ben Samenu Shishi.
The little plastic sign on here. The baseball clicker. Oh, that's it. Sorry. That's Jennifer Shaw, I think you're right.
It's mechanical, it's not
We're on page 74, moving on to page 75, and this is the famous split between Avram and Lot. And it's interesting that Avram and Lot are both accumulating a great deal of wealth, and their shepherds are in conflict with one another over water rights, which makes perfect sense, water rights and grazing rights. And Avram takes the high road, and he says, we're living here. Wherever you want to go, you go left, I go right, you go right, I go left, whatever you want, it's up to you. You make the choice. And Avram the younger, Lot the younger, looks around and he sees this area over there, it looks really, really attractive and fertile. So he says, I'm going to go that way. And so Avram says, okay, fine, you're going that way, I'm going here. And the parenthetical is that the attractive spot that catches the eye of Lot is the Kikar HaYordain, the plain, the flat area, plain of Yordain, not too far from Sodom and Amorah, which according to this earlier statement and earlier position in time is still an attractive area because the Mapecha, the explosion and the fire and brimstone has not yet happened. So it's a beautiful area, it's attractive. And so Avram chooses to remain in Canaan, which is the southern Negev area, which is largely oasis, but still somewhat wilderness. So here, you take the good spot. And we'll know what happens. You want to be up here? No. Okay, fine. Good. I wonder if you're up here. Yeah. Okay. So where are we going?
we look.
Baruch Adonai Hambarak.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Olam Ba'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hambarak Olam Ba'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar lanu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Notei HaTorah.
Amen. וגם לא תהלך את אברהם היצון בקרולים ונוסעת בארץ לשביע טוב כי היה רכושם רב ויוכלו לשביע טוב ויהי ריב בין ומבני אברהם ובין ריב מבני לוט והכנענים הפריזי היושבי בארץ ואומר אברהם אל לוט ויאמר אברהם אל לוט אל נתיב ריבה ביני ובינך ובין רע ובין לך כי אנשים אחים אנחנו הלוך ארץ לבניך כי פרידה מי עלי עם השמאל וימין וימין והשמאל ויסלו תתינו ויפול כיכר הירדן כי כולך משקה הנה שחט אדוני את סדום ואת עמורה כגן אדוני כארץ מצרים בואכה צוהר ויבחר לוט את כל כיכר הירדן ויסע לוט מקדם ויפרדו איש מעל אחיו.
Baruch Adonai, Baruch Atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah tamet v'chayei olam natan b'tefenu. Baruch Atah Adonai, Notei HaTorah.
Amen. We're on verse number 12. Teddy, would you like to lead us? יבוא יוסף בן שמנו לשביעי
Baruch hu et Adonai haborah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Avu Yishab Eretz Canaan v'lo Yishab Arei Kikar v'al Ahav Sodom v'anshi Sodom v'im v'chatim l'Adonai Moed v'Adonai Amar Avram Achrei Pred Lot Neimo Sanai Nechorei Min Amakom Asher Atah Sham Sofon Avoneg V'Avekema V'Yamah Ki Kol Haaretz Asher Atah Ro'el L'cha Enel Zarcha Ad Olam V'samti Zarcha Kafar Haaretz Asher Im Yuchal Ish Linot Et Afar Haaretz Gam Zarcha Yimeneh Kumi Taleb Eretz La'arka Urach Ba Ki L'cha Enena V'Avram V'Yavo V'Yeshev Elei Mamrei Asher B'Chavron V'Yivin Sham Mizbeach L'Adonai.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah temet v'chayei olam nota betochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Yikada v'Yikada Shemei Rama V'Chaye Char V'Yam V'Char V'Chaye V'Chol Beit Yisrael V'Agava V'Agava V'Vizman Kariv V'Merah Yesh Merah V'Mevorah Olam Le'Yom Le'Olayam Yitvarah Yitvarah V'Yishtabach V'Parim V'Naseh V'Nadar V'Taleh V'Talao Shemei Kedusha Leil Kavachata V'Shirata Tush V'Chata V'Neh V'Chata Ta'amiran V'Yomah V'Merah. We pause now and we share a prayer, Mishaberach L'Cholim, a prayer for those who are ill in our community. And if you know someone, please mention that person's name at this time, along with the names that we have here before us. Mishaberach L'Cholim, Avu, B'Tino Sarah, Rivka L'Cholim Leah, B'Frek Rapid Kochel, V'Kolel Et. And the left court into Vadgisha, Avu Yudah Ben Gisha, Chana Sarva Peshalea, L'Leah Bataviva, Claudia Thomas, David Shlomo Ben Menachem, Nabrunit Bat Aliza, Karnea Chaneva Tsari Menu, Pat Kako, Prince of Avashi, Yudah Tsari Menu, Ruth Bat Tsari Menu, Jonathan Mathis, Natalie Mathis, Tom Estoni, Wendy Fassman, George Patinos, Chai Esteban Nachama, Diane Sizemore, Yaakov Arona Chayachana, Karnea Bat Tsari Menu, Rivka Bat Kayla, Shalomit Bat Kayla, Steve Holmes, Abi Moshe Ben Lochana, Rivka Bat Chashem Lifsha, Yuri Bat Laverne, Shmuel Shimon Ben Eliyahu, Yaakov Ben Liora, Billy Singleton, Linda Bat Mina, Laura Barron, Naomi Bat Elisheva, Yeshua Ben Tzudek, Dora Bat Scheindel, Mekolum she's going to be having the Harris words, which will hush, but Lord, Amen. For you, O God, bless our mothers and our fathers. And as you blessed our ancestors, so too bring your blessing of life and of health and of strength upon their descendants, upon all of us and our loved ones, members locally and people beyond this place. Bring forth your touch, the touch that created the entire universe. Let there be healing and growth, strength, reprieve from ailment and suffering. May there be confidence in the hearts and minds of all those who are afflicted and for whom we pray. For they know that we are loving them and caring for them. And they are in our minds, even as you, O God, attend to them. Bring forth healing and strength in the days and hours ahead. And may this new week, be a time for them to stand up and walk forward with renewed health and confidence. Above all, bring shalom to all of our loved ones who are ill and in need of healing. And we all say, Amen. Mount earlier is Hashem Omar.
Yamud,
Harav,
Melech, Ben, Chaim, Betima, Matir, Hazak.
Thank you. There it is. Baruch et Adonai Baruch.
Baruch Adonai Baruch
Something to our far over to share in you how ishli note at afar arts comes our hayim and kum to left arts or kaproch ba kilcha and no yalavra by ovation pilema ray shibkhem bro by when shamis be la don't Baruch atah Elohim yimachol mashin ton to khayot Amen.
Amen. Julia.
Thanks for coming. Appreciate it. No. Landscape see God is appropriate. We're going to study 1 or 2 sentences of the Haftorah and then continue on so we can be on time. So the Haftorah begins on page 95. And it's from Isaiah. In our annual cycle of about 65 to 70 Haftorahs, 18 of them come from Isaiah. Our ancient ancestors loved Isaiah. He was the guy. And his poetry is just exceptional. And so we're going to jump. I just want you to see his name on the top of page 95 in chapter number 40, but we're going to jump to page 97. And I think this may be the reason that this section of Isaiah has become a sign as the Haftorah for Lech Lecha. Verse number 8. But you, Israel, this is Isaiah. By the way, Isaiah is living 1,100 years after Avram and Sarai. 1,100 years. So Avram and Sarai are ancient history for Isaiah and the people to whom Isaiah is speaking. 1,100 years have passed. And Isaiah says in verse 8, but you, Israel, my servant, Jacob, whom I have chosen, you are the seed of Abraham, my friend. Wow. Just imagine that Abraham is God's friend. How do you feel when somebody says, God is your friend? What will that do inside you? Make it glow. God's your friend. And Isaiah is speaking to his contemporaries and saying, your great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandpa was Avram, and he was God's friend. And so because of that, God sees all of you and all of us now in our time as being friends with God. What an enormous uplift. Verse number 9. You whom I drew from the ends of the earth and called from its far quarters, or
referring to the Jewish people scattered about and are going to be hopefully coming back together someday. To whom I said, "You are my servant. I chose you, I have not rejected you," which means that I, God, like Isaiah, am in this with you, O Israel, for the long term. L'dor v'dor, generation to generation. In other words, forever and ever. And we have these beautiful stained glass, and we don't often pay attention to them, but I like looking at them. And it's this panel that could be considered our beginning, because at the top we have the stars, and at the bottom we have this design. This might be waves, so if this is waves, then that's probably the seashore. And it's in this week's Torah reading and then successive Torah readings that we hear the message that God is going to make the people of Israel, the descendants of Abraham and Sarai, as numerous as the stars in the heavens above and the grains of sand by the seashore. And if you and I want to be arithmetical about it and say, "Hey God, check your population statistics. There are not that many Jews around. What's the deal?" And that's one way of looking at it, that maybe we are just getting started having multiple descendants, and we're going to yet grow someday in the next 5,000 years into being an enormous population. Plausible. I look at it differently. I think about the stars in the heavens and how much light they bring and how much hope they beacon forth. And when you and I are feeling alone or when it's dark, we go outside and we look up and we see those stars and we see starlight coming to us from millions, billions of light years away and making a difference. That's us, folks. We're starlight. We make a difference. And that starlight is going to continue to sail forth across the eons of the distances of the galaxy and continue to make a touch for long, long, long durations of time. And that's our touch as well, because we're the friends of God. Please rise for Hagam Lila. Elijah and Shami, come forward, please, for Hagam Lila. 184. Closing the ark, the 8th high, on page 184. Eighth high, remaining standing. Olenu is on page 205. Olenu l'shabeach l'adon ha'kol l'teinu l'alil se'breshit shelo asanu goyei ha'ratzot ve'lo samanu k'mishpachot Adama shelo sam elkeinu kahem ve'nor aleinu k'chol hamonam v'anachnu rorim u'mishachavim u'modim lifnei melech malchei hamodim hakadosh baruch hu she'bonu teshamayim v'yosei haaretz u'moshav yekarav hashamayim yimal v'shvin akuzal v'shvin akuzal v'galei meromim hu Eloheinu enon emet malkeinu v'mezulato k'akatu v'torato yadata yom v'yadata yom l'shtevota el levavecha ki Adonai Elohim v'shamayim yimal v'al haaretz mitachon enon enon. K'katuv b'toratecha Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed v'ne'emar Haya Adonai le'melech ha'aretz v'yom hahu yiyeh Adonai echad u'shemo echad. In a moment, Morris Kaddish, down on page 207. And on this Shabbat, we remember with great love Marcus Klein, Harris Marshak, Rose Grodsky, Broom Fisher, Edith Wolf, Usher Walensky, Anna Lappin, Terry Grodsky, Mill Davidson, Chester Resnick, Mary Weiss Rossner, Teresa Chasson, Morris Weber, Ella Solowski, Rosabelle Dreyfus, Robert Voigt, Phil Einstein, Jackie Berman, Sam Muchnick, Roger Katz. Any other names to mention? Perhaps those at home have a name to mention.
Harry Margolis. Harry Margolis.
Harry
My
Margolis.
great-grandfather.
Harry Margolis. And those at home might be sharing their name as well. Passage is on page 207. Yitgadal v'yikadash shemei rabo. Amen. Be'olma divarach hirute v'yalich malchute. V'chayechon v'yomechon. V'chaye b'chol be'Yisrael. Ba'agala v'gizaman kariv v'imeru. Amen. Yehei shemei rabo v'torach l'olam olamei olmaya. Yitorach v'yishtabach v'yitpar v'yitramam v'yitaseh v'yithadar v'yitale v'yithalal shemei k'kudashah v'richu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran ba'olma v'yimeru. Amen. Yehei shalom rabo min shemaya v'chayim oleinu v'yachol Yisrael v'yimeru. Amen. Oseh shalom v'imramah hu ya'aseh shalom oleinu v'yachol Yisrael v'yimeru. Amen. We know what the word chayim is. It means life. We know what the word shalom and the Aramaic sister word shalom are. Peace. So those who are mourning or grieving are praying for life and peace for everyone. Take hold of that for a moment. We're not talking about sorrow or loss or death. We're seeking hope and faith for each other and peace for people who we will never meet. That's how Jewish people conclude the service when thinking about their loved ones. Somehow the name Mourners Kaddish got attached to this. If we could change that nickname, which would be very hard, could we come up with a better name? How about the prayer for hope and peace for everyone, even when I'm potentially in sorrow? It's too long to put in the caption of the page. Prayer for hope and peace for everyone, even when I'm in sorrow. Reminders, Alabama Community Virtual Zoom Havdalah tonight is at 7. And tonight, change your clocks. You get an extra hour of sleep or Torah study, or whatever else you're doing with that extra hour. Tanakh is on Zoom on Monday, Adult Hebrew on YouTube on Tuesday. Looking ahead, Friday, November 11th is our Veterans Day service. And the service is slightly modified, and we're seeking your members of the synagogue to come here. And if you have served, or if you have a family member who served, please come. We want to show honor and respect to all of those who have served in the armed forces. And we want to remember those who have died, but did serve in prior years. And that's Friday the 11th, that's during the Friday evening service. And on Sunday the 13th, we'll be at the Temple Cemetery first for a brief gathering, and then we'll place flags at the graves of veterans in both the Temple and the Shul cemeteries. And that's on Sunday the 13th at noon. Sunday the 13th at noon. And it's emotional to see members of the Shul and Temple come together in reflection. We need to show honor. We need to be grateful. So that's Sunday the 13th at noon. And then Friday, November 18th, which is 2 Fridays from now, is our Guitar Shabbat, and there'll be only to follow. Oh, Friday the 11th, Veterans Day, we have a special on it. And the Friday the 18th, Guitar Shabbat, we have our own ed. So 2 opportunities to schmooze and mess a little bit together.
And we'll conclude with the Adon Olam. It's on page 211. Then we'll make a Kiddush in the Motzi in the social hall. 211. Adon Olam Asher Malach Terem Kol Yitzir Nivra Li'eg Nasa V'chetzo Kol Azai Melech Shemo Nikra Azai Melech Shemo Nikra V'yacharei Kichlot HaKol Levado Yimon Nora V'hu Haya V'hu Hoveh V'hu Yiyeh V'tifara V'hu Yiyeh V'tifara V'hu Echad V'yeh Sheni Laham Shilo Lahachira V'li Reshit V'li Tachlit V'lo Ha'oz V'ha'misra V'lo Ha'oz V'ha'misra V'hu Eli V'chai Go'ali V'tzur Cheli V'yetzara V'hu Nisi U'manozli Menat Kosi V'yom Ekra Menat Kosi V'yom Ekra V'yado Avkiruchi V'etishan V'yaira V'imruchi Yaviati Adonai Li V'lo Ira Adonai Li V'lo Ira. Shabbos, thank you for joining in. We look forward to seeing you when you're able to come into the shul. And remember that you are part of our community. We love you. May God bless you with health and peace until we see each other. Shalom.
Thank you.